Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP Jampash from the Two-Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the doctor himself, Dr. Lavie Margolin. Welcome in. How you doing?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. Right before I jumped on here, I got a little message from my building that I had a package, something that I'd
Whoa.
ordered a little while ago, but I didn't think much about it in a while. So I don't know if your kids are into it, John. The unboxing videos, I'm not sure how this is going to work for people just listening on a podcast, but either way, it'll be quick. So I opened up the box, but I didn't take it out yet, but
Oh, yes.
I have a box here. This is from the Asylum Wrestling Store. They are
Oh,
the U.S. distributor of what I'm about to open. I've never looked at it yet in person, so we will unbox it. I'm not sure how I'll do it while I'm holding it up, but bear with me a second.
wow.
So,
This is quite a surprise. This is not on the run
yes.
sheet here. This is nice. All right.
So, in the packaging, I think you can see what it is
Wow.
already.
Yes, Barry Horowitz figure. Nice.
So let's see here. There was different choices of uh, Barry Horowitz styles. Okay, it comes in its own little package here. So maybe I'll. Oops, actually that's not closed. Okay, that's fine. So there it is. The
Nice.
Barry Horowitz. I chose, of course, the Star of David.
Yes.
Um, I think this was
Kayfabe
the
hero.
outfit when he won. No, actually, he started wearing it after he won. Right, the official match. Horowitz wins, um, and then on the back here. Oh,
Nice.
for I'm not going to nitpick it, but for people that are very into the collecting, sorry, it has a little bit of damage on the bubble and
Oh,
all of that. But I'm not so worried. But I'm not going to take it out of the. I'm not going to take it out of the package because I think it looks cool the way it is.
in
Six
the
feet.
Hasbro vein, by the way.
Yeah, there. It's pretty cool. Um, yeah, I'll have to compare it. I don't have many. Actually, I never bought many Hasbro's. I had the Ultimate Warrior, but I got into from Wizard the Guide to Comics, like where you would like paint it over and try and make it something else. So
Yes.
I forgot what I was trying to make it, but like that one I made a mess of. But I still have Giant Gonzalez. So
Whoa. Wow. That's a good one. Yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
my kids like playing with it. It has good like stomping action. So I'll have to compare it a different time. But it has its accolades or allocades, as Lex Luger would say. 6 feet tall, 221 pounds, born 1959 from St. Petersburg. PWI Most Inspirational Wrestler, 1995. I remember that was a very exciting moment for me. NWA Florida Heavyweight Champion, AWA Southern Tag Team Champion, CWA World Middleweight Champion, EWA Heavyweight Champion. I don't remember the EWA part. And then this, of course, is overseen by a friend of the show, Sean NG of KWA Kayfabe Hero. So, John, when you make those YouTube shorts, we'll have to surprise him and
Yes.
tag him on there. And
Yes.
again, I'm okay with the modest bubble issue. So no worries on that. But I might display it here here on my desk. I bought a
I
Ninja
love it.
Turtle Macho Man Randy Savage years ago, but it's kind of basically been in a box.
I love it. I got a buddy here in New Jersey, the wrestling collector. He always has the Hasbro's, and he'll sometimes have those guys. So it's awesome. I love it. They literally line up at their exact same height and everything. So I mean, we talked to Sean about this, but they basically have the molds of the Hasbro's. I think those are awesome, and it's so cool that he gets his own. Barry Horowitz now gets his own figure. Never got it years ago. You know what I mean? I think it's so cool that these guys are getting their figures now.
And now the truth can be told. I am actually the inspiration for bringing this Barry Horowitz figure to life. I think I
Wow.
had mentioned on air, or maybe like in follow up afterwards. Have you ever thought about Barry Horowitz? And Sean looked into it, and he happened to be available. Not committed to another toy manufacturer at that time, and made things happen. I think the fun thing about them, especially, and some other companies like them, is that like if you're making the same figure that people had as like when you were kids, it's not really unique, but they're getting sort of like the ones that uh, Mantar, PN News, Comet Kid, all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of like fun to have the unique characters as well that sort of have more cachet. We kind of find it more interesting now to like talk about the weirder stuff. Of course, Barry Horowitz isn't weird, but he wouldn't have had a figure if it was a limited run.
Right. Rare guy that, to be honest, should have gotten a figure back in the day. If you think about it, if Outback Jack has a figure and Ted Arcidi, Barry Horowitz should, and Iron Mike Sharp should have gotten one. Like there's guys that you just like kind of shake your head and like, man, they should have got one now. It's 2025 and they're finally getting their flowers, if you will. They're finally getting their figures.
Yeah, and if they want to do the WCW ones, you've had really fascinating interviews with about 30 guys
Yeah.
who weren't
Yeah.
top of the card that never had their figure. So there's a whole
Yeah.
run there that can happen as well.
Yep, so true. So damn true. Now, speaking of WWE, we don't really talk too much WWE on the show, but today we will be talking about it because of the ID program and because of Syko Stu here getting I don't even know how to describe it, but I guess cheap shotted by Rampage Jackson's son Raja Jackson. To kind of catch everybody up, they were backstage behind the scenes, and Psycho Stu was kind of just joking around. He hit him over the head with a beer bottle. Not really hit him. I mean, he kind of like kayfabed him, kind of joking around. And for some reason, the guy AJ Mana, who's the guy with the cowboy hat, told him, "You better get your receipt when you get out there, and if anybody has a problem, I'll do something about it." So what does he do? Psycho Stu's having his match. Roger Jackson jumps in, cheap shots him, knocks him out with the kind of the Rampage Slam, if you will. If everybody very familiar with that famous MMA fight, so he does that, but not only does he knock him out with the slam, he just punches him over 20 times, breaks his jaw. It was I don't know if he necessarily broke his jaw, but broke a bone in his jaw and broke a bunch of his teeth too. So we're going to get into that too. But catch us up on WWE ID, catch up us up on Psycho Stu, the recovery, everything like that.
Yeah, really tragic, and part of it, of course, is we've come to learn, took up pro wrestling as a way to manage his PTSD after serving our country. And obviously, it's something he has been doing well at this level for a number of years, and it was meaningful to him. And just to have his career at least put on hold, and his life literally put on hold because of this is really tragic. I tend not to watch those type of videos generally, when New Jack attacked who was that guy that was like 75 years old at the time, Gypsy Joe,
Yes,
those
yes,
sort of things. Like it's not my type of viewing, but I did want to see what actually happened here, and it was just like weird and just like so vicious. And I think people were in shock. Some people said, "Why didn't the referee jump in faster?" Like he wasn't expecting this, right? It's not like Big John McCarthy is there and like
yeah,
finally, another wrestler jumped in. But obviously, that's a very serious aspect. And there's a GoFundMe. Mr. Beast caught wind of it, and he donated $10,000. Somebody to credit, basically every time there's a GoFundMe of some note, meaning that it has enough publicity for people to notice and so on. Chris Jericho always seems to donate
yes,
20, so he donated $2,500. So um, but obviously very serious issues, I think, covered by a lot of people. And when you hear this, I'm sure it's a constantly changing thing in terms of his status. So just well wishes, of course, to him. And secondly, of course, we hope justice is served. And from what we understand, it's been reported thus far, LAPD is looking into it. So that's that. So not to discount that, but just kind of want to look at it from like a more macro level. Okay, so WWE has been basically blessing um, training schools that have some sort of connection to WWE or long standing relationships like Black and Brave Academy, um, and in this situation, Knox Pro. I think there was about 5, maybe up to 6 at a certain point where they would actually message and say like, this is somewhere you should check out, not in so many words. And then there's the ID program, right, where they sign talents. I think that they
Yep.
released 3 today, as I didn't get to see the names, but a certain number of talent where basically they're on their Evolve shows from time to time. But for the most part, they're under contract and they're sort of making their way around the wrestling universe, kind of, as far as we know, unrestricted. There's never been that point yet where, Tony Khan, I think, had said he might test it or something where, you book WWE ID talent and what happens. And of course, smartly, the talent has stayed away from what would happen.
Yeah. But
But there's
obviously,
this.
they have to cut ties with Knox Pro because what the hell kind of operation they running? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's like immediately they're sort of like kind of, and it looked rinky dink. I mean, like from pro wrestling independence, we don't have that high expectations, but I don't know what was going on there, like what type of venue it was, and like just like the whole situation. Why was the locker room like outside? Um, so like from like a corporate perspective, it's just too loose. Obviously, it makes them susceptible to things, and as like fans and so on, we want like WWE to be like, don't restrict things, let people do what they want, go to this company, go to that company. It's not fair, but from this perspective, you just have to lay out certain structures. So I'd imagine there's some things already, but let's say like when you think about training schools, you have to make sure they have the proper insurance. What type of ring are they using? What are the venue expectations? If it's not WWE ID talent, who are the talents being used? Is there a background check on the trainers? Are there certain requirements of the people to train? Do you have to be of a certain age? When you do shows, where will those shows be, and that sort of thing. For WWE ID talent, um, you know, can they go anywhere? Are there certain other people that they don't want on the show? All that sort of thing that they're kind of figuring it out as they go. But you kind of see here that you have to do it, in a way that's a lot quicker. You have to put the structures, and obviously, by keeping it loose, it keeps the budget low. And there's something fun to like the Wild West pro wrestling, but it also has like a susceptibility here too. So, what do you think, John? Like, how much should they like formalize things, but keep like sort of like a robust training and independent wrestling scene going that has some WWE support?
It just seems like if they're going to do that and put their name on it, everything you said as far as like, oh, you got a background check, you got to do this, you got to do that. But how could you do that with all these random places that they work? And even something like Knox Pro, which is on their ID program, they literally just put it on the ID program because of Rikishi, because he's the owner. Yes, I know Rusev came from there, there's a bunch of other guys and stuff, but it's really because of Rikishi. And he just because that's the WWE legend, and obviously hit 3 of his kids are in WWE right now, and they're on top of the card and everything else. So that was all kind of on like his reputation. Then you look a little deeper and you're like, well, I don't know if this school should be ID, and I think that's going to probably happen more often. There's going to be some sort of scrutiny on WWE's part of looking into all this ID program and all the different organizations they're working with. I feel like there's definitely going to be some sort of like crackdown, or they're going to have to change something up because it sounds great in principle, but you have to do a lot on the back end to figure out how to clean some of this stuff up. I mean, because this is horrible. Because not only that happens. It was kind of a Raja Jackson. Obviously, if you look at him, he probably needs mental help. There's something off with him big time. Definitely. And I'm not just saying that to make fun of him or disparage him. I'm just saying you could tell by what happened in the incident, he definitely needs some sort of mental help. and this guy's in and around Knox Pro. Does Rikishi know? You know, like there's so many like ifs, ands, and buts going on with this stuff. So you just don't know like who you're kind of dealing with and stuff. So they got to do something to crack down because it can get kind of scary. And if you look at it too, I forgot to mention this. I don't know if you noticed this. The other wrestler that was in the match with the Syko Stu, he pinned him after the match. The ref counted to three while the guy was almost dying. Can you believe that? So it's just like
Oh.
that. Then WWE sees that and it's like, holy, what kind of organization are we tied to here?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, especially once you're like, semi-pro or whatever it may be, like it might be like, okay, you always have to keep going, and like sometimes it's like unbelievable, like to like even realize like, is this planned or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So it's just like a whole mess. I think you have to like they've been very ambitious. I know Triple H is, like much more open in terms of the wrestling community, like in terms of working with others and so on, except AEW, of course. But like you have to take a step back, and it's better to have like two schools and 12 promotions that you actually know, where you're kind of filtering the ID talent in and out. Look, GCW, and you wouldn't want I mean, and there's risks with that, right? Because some of their biggest shows are like death matches and so on, but less and less these days. But um, so you even have to mitigate that with them. But let's say they do what were the articles that they're contracted to around like 50 something shows a year, whatever it may be. So if there's 48 that you could send town to, that's like 48, right? And then you have TNA and you have AAA now and so on. So like you could do these things, but like the independent wrestling scene is entertaining, not for these extremes that happen here, but just because it is like wacky, and it is fun to go like to a show and like an unexpected place and a weird venue, and that's part of the story. But that's not really like the expectations if you're training like professionals and like to be associated with that.
And I don't know if he was like really defending him, but he sounded like he was defending him. Mark Henry was like defending Jackson. I was like, holy crap! And you're kind of affiliated with WWE, and your son is kind of going through through the NIL program, and you're going to defend that. So if you're WWE, even on that end, you have to like watch who is defending like heinous actions and stuff too, and you got to like maybe not rid yourself of guys like that, but Mark Henry probably needs a talking to if he's going to defend stuff like that. I mean, that's just insane.
Yeah, and clearly, I didn't. I mean, I'm a big Quentin Rampage Jackson fan from back
Oh,
in the
me too.
day,
He's one of the best. Yeah.
but I had no idea how many if he had kids, how many kids he had. And this guy like was
Right.
a complete unknown. I didn't know he was hanging around the wrestling business. Obviously, that gave him the in, and like you sort of like have a heightened expectation of like somebody that comes from like a famous family, or at least like somebody that and it's you sort of want to be like buddy buddy because it's kind of like cool. Like Quentin Jackson seems like a fun person, whatever it may be. So like so that gives them an in. I guess that's like the challenges with like celebrity culture, and as we talked about thematically last week, even like who should be around the business, who shouldn't, and so on. So obviously certainly the law should get involved, and they might sue this person. I don't think this event had any particular connection to WWE to where that they would like be able to stretch it to a WWE lawsuit, but you just like you're not too far away from that if you're affiliating with a promotion like this, even if Rikishi's name is on it. This is the first time I want to hear Rikishi on a podcast because he always has something to say. I'm
Yes.
not
Yeah.
sure what day it usually comes
Yeah.
out, or if he's just going to be careful and not say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. He's always got something to say. Let's hear you say something now, Rikishi. Come on, man. I love Big Keish, but man, this is going to be a rough one for him. But,
Um,
speaking of WB and everything that's going on, I know we're talking about ID stuff, but what about NXT? It seems like they're like doing pretty well attendance wise. It seems like maybe, and, how's TNA doing attendance wise? So go over maybe some NXT stuff.
yeah, so like sort of like since the NXT shows, we'll get to numbers soon, but I think it was like 14 this year that have taken place thus far. Sort of like tickets are on sale that are of some scale, meaning that they're on Ticketmaster or equivalent sites, so that WrestleTix is tracking it. Um, I thought that they were doing particularly well, but when you compare it to the recent past, some surprises, and compared to TNA this year, some surprises too. But just ahead of that, one of the most interesting things that they're doing right now is this triple shot from September 5th to 7th. Of course, Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium, North Charleston Convention Center, Augusta, Georgia, kind of like old Crockett or NWA kind of B towns, I guess. Um, and I apologize if I'm messing that up. Like, no, this is a major city or whatever. But in smaller venues at the least, in terms of these shows. So the first show, most of it's a pretty small setup, Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium on the floor, pretty small setup. Three-quarters, I would say, of the seats are gone on the floor. No WrestleTix coverage yet. I gave them a heads up that they can actually count this on Ticketmaster. And then there's a GA balcony, but I would say a few hundred tickets advance from the reserved. Now, 9/6, 777 for a setup of 1490, and Augusta 597 for a setup of 1659. So I would say their expectations are probably not that high, but I think even with lower expectations, that doesn't seem like so great, in terms of an experiment there, John.
Yeah, weird. Like all the Shawn Michaels is cooking, NXT is cooking, and it seems like on the surface seems like they're doing good, but not even compared to like 2023. They were like way down tickets wise. So I don't know if they're running smaller venues and it's lower expectations, but and I know they're on CW now, so maybe I'm thinking they're hotter than they are, but it weird. They're like WWE is super hot. I don't know about NXT to be honest.
Yeah, what was interesting, and of course, like, I think there's a way to look at these numbers where, like, you could probably come up with all different sorts of outcomes. You could take out outliers,
Right.
that sort of thing. Maybe you could find events where the numbers weren't listed, but you can do estimates. So again, like, I haven't been following the NXT numbers as closely as some other promotions, just because it's sort of like WWE, but it's not covered as much except when it's the big events, and then it's covered a lot. But what's interesting is that to date, so this includes events that, where tickets are on sale. So obviously for LOL, for TNA, there's going to be a final number that's over 3,000. And for NXT, there's going to be, if we're to count Worlds Collide for this purpose, obviously they'll come up with a number that's higher than 1750 at the end of the day. But what was interesting is that for this year, using like apples to apples, NXT has 14 events, TNA has 11 events that are tracked in this way. NXT 2142 average and TNA 2347. So basically the equivalent of one another. John, like, off the top of your head, if we were to say like 2025, do you think that they would have been like even? Like, how would you think like NXT would be doing?
I would have thought pretty close to even, to be honest, like pretty dead even.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, for some reason I would think, like, I always thought about it like NXT was sort of like blessing TNA, with a
Mm.
spotlight and when they did well. But TNA, obviously, they're benefiting a lot from WWE, but they're holding their own and are pretty
Yeah,
equivalent
better.
there. So,
Yep.
sorry, John.
A little bit better, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to run through it quickly, and this is obviously, if the event hasn't happened yet, this is a snapshot in time. So NXT, in starting in January, Shrine Expo Hall, 1888, Center Stage in Atlanta, 772. Obviously, that's a full venue. DC Care First Arena, 3849. Cincinnati Andrew J. Brady Music Center, 1397. So that was a TV taping that came across really well. Theater at MSG 4775. So that's a sellout. Uh, April 19th, Stand Deliver T-Mobile Arena, 7,000. Fountain Blue in Vegas, 1888. Back to Center Stage, 768. 713 Music Hall in Houston, 1495. Philadelphia, the Met, presented by Highmark, 1665. Lowell, 1830. And that show would have just occurred. So that's a final number there. Then we talked about the triple shot. The first show wasn't counted in the numbers. And Vegas, of course, Worlds Collide at the moment, 1754. So that's a little bit informative too, because in some of those venues, that was the max capacity. For TNA, Curtis Colwell Center in Garland, Texas, for 4,032. In LA, Galen Center, this was estimated at a little bit over that, like 4,500, 4,250. That wasn't in the numbers here. Mullet or Muley Arena, Tempe, Arizona, 1807. UBS, for this purpose, WrestleTix has it at 7042. Baltimore, double shot, 1912, 1293. Armory, Minneapolis. So this is happening soon. 482, 628. Edmonton, these numbers will continue to grow. They're doing very well there. 1861, 1725. Lowell, 2964. What's also interesting, of course, is that for all the knocking AEW, and of course, even taking out like outliers, like their biggest pay-per-views and so on, for the most part, 2000 is around the lowest, that they would do, except when they're doing, theaters or something like that, which actually come across really well on television. So I would say that AEW is healthily ahead of these numbers for both with NXT and TNA, in a lock here. Obviously, again, taking out the NXT Florida loop, which I want to actually cover a little bit, because sometimes like it feels like when you're on the independents, like all the way back in the day, in OVW, FCW, even NXT in Florida, I think they used to run more, but they're not running all of the time. So upcoming in September, besides the triple shot in early September, September 12th and 13th, Fort Pierce and Orlando. So tickets are usually about $17 to $27 max in these type of venues. We'll come back to September 16th in a moment, but September 26th and 27th, Citrus Springs, St. Petersburg again, Jacksonville on October 3rd, Gainesville on October 4th, October 17th, Venice, Florida, October 18th, Dade City, Florida, Tampa on November 8th, and NXT Live Bartow on November 21st. And interestingly, they're coming back to Full Sail for a special show, which kind of takes something that was mundane for a while, but it's kind of a cool experience to come back there. I think TNA was there not too long ago. John, have you ever been to like a run-of-the-mill NXT show in Florida? They kind of sound fun.
No, never have. Oddly enough, I used to been to a few TNA shows down in Florida, to the old tapings there, but never at Full Sail, never NXT.
Was that back in the day when you had to like it was free, but you had to stand online for it?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So how
And
early did you have to get there, and what was that like?
to be honest, we weren't. I mean, we were there probably like an hour early, but it wasn't like, to me, like that's not crazy considering the free tickets. You know what I mean? So it wasn't crazy. And AJ was there. God, this is like 05 ish. I guess it was some. I mean, this is like 20 years ago, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it. But I thought it was going to be like jam packed and out to the street and be waiting for hours. But we got there probably like an hour, maybe an hour and a half before it started, and I was surprised. We got right in, no problem. And it wasn't like that crazy of a wait.
Cool. A moment in time. So what was interesting,
Yeah.
like, okay, so you have these NXT and TNA numbers. So like, okay, but so we're gonna take TNA away right now because in 23 and 24 they weren't scaled up to do shows of this type. So that speaks to something about where their position was. But in those 2 years, there were 17 NXT events that averaged 5,301. So let's go through those quickly from 23 to 24, starting in February. NXT Vengeance Day, Charlotte, Spectrum Center, 5,719. Stand and Deliver, LA, Crypto Arena, 7,584, right? Is that the major arena that's like a 20,000 seat building?
Hmm. Yep.
Lowell Sangha Center, 3482. So I think they just did half of that, right? Great American Bash, Cedar Park, HEB Center, 4252. No Mercy, Bakersfield, 4954. Deadline, 5529. Vengeance, 3970. Stand and Deliver, Wells Fargo, 14607. Battleground, so this was at the Apex, 679. Heat Wave in Toronto, 9044. No Mercy, 6899. Are these NXT events or did I make a mistake? Like No Mercy at the Ball Arena?
I think so. I think
Okay.
that's if Fort Lauderdale. I'm not sure
Okay.
actually.
Okay, because I had filtered the WrestleTix sheet by by NXT. So but some of these names like they sound more like WWE pay-per-view names, right? But I think it gets confusing because they've some of those names they don't use anymore, but now they brand them as NXT. So
Yeah,
it
so it's interesting, like the way they promote it. It is No Mercy, but it's an NXT show. But when you look it up, it's not listed as um, NXT. It's listed as WWE because they want more people to watch it. But it is an NXT show, so it's
okay,
Saturday the 27th. But it's called WWE No Mercy, but it's really NXT. Very
okay.
weird. So then there's Halloween Havoc, WWE Halloween Havoc, but it's really NXT Halloween Havoc. So it is weird the way that they are calling these like PLEs that are NXT WWE PLEs. It's weird.
Yeah, it seemed to have benefit them, especially like in terms of the branding and like these are so
Yeah.
much more high profile. But then you start seeing here, um, so starting, I guess this is actually when they went to um they went to the CW, right? Like October 8th, the factory in St. Louis, 1832. Halloween Havoc, Giant Center, 4940, 2300 Arena. Minneapolis Armory, so the same venue that NXT is now running, 2000, and then in Lowell, 1838. So you could see there that drop off. What was it? A year and a half later, 3482, 1838, and then I think the recent Lowell show was also of a of a similar nature, 1830. So basically the same there. So it was hard to notice, but it's interesting to see like how much things have dropped off for NXT. I thought they were like picking it back up. I mean, with the CW success, I think they might be doing better than ever, overall. But in terms of like the high profile shows, things are down.
Yes. Yes. So what about GC Dub? What's going on? Who's the Mount Rushmore? Is Killer Cross on the Mount Rushmore? What is going on at GCW right now?
So it's interesting. There was a lot of hints of surprises. There were surprises. I think people were happy. It's interesting, like when you have surprises, because we had talked about this homecoming that it didn't look like a lot of tickets were moved in advance. So you're kind of saving that to sort of like build buzz, which isn't the worst idea. But um, let's see, Nick Gage returned.
Yep.
Not necessarily to wrestle, but sort of to speak, and he made it
Looks
clear
like
that
he's in
he's
good shape too. He's in good
yeah,
shape.
so hopefully he's in a good position all the way overall. Brett named his Mount Rushmore Joey Janela, Matt Tremont, and Effie, in addition to Nick Gage. And then Killer Cross and Lady Scarlet arrived as well. So that was their first appearance there in the indie scene, I think. So interesting to see. Like, I think you can bring in names, but start building up buzz, but to see like what you do with them and so on. So that's yet to be seen. Um, then they announced a return to on October 11th and 12th for Fight Club weekend. Back to the Juggalos, the Art of War game. So I don't know, John. Like this doesn't seem to be picking up the momentum that I expected originally, but they're going to that well, so we'll see we'll see how that works out. Of course, no offense to friends of the show, our guests, Brett and Violent J, but something has to happen. I
Oh, it'll
gave them
pick
the
up with War
roadmap.
Games. Yeah,
Oh yeah, you
it'll
have the
pick up
road.
with War Games. It'll pick up though, I think.
Yeah, and I gave the roadmap. They know what they need to do.
Yes.
But so okay. So what else is upcoming? So Detroit on September 12th, Indianapolis on September 13th, Mesa, Arizona on the 19th. LA is showing, not surprisingly, showing the most momentum at the moment. Um, that, of course, the site, as we've talked about, has the frequent sales. September 20th. Bloodsport is its own thing in the UK, September 28th. Um, Anchorage, Alaska, October 4th. And then back to Atlantic City. Of some shows, of course, will fill in between. Then a month later on October, not a month later, they just have a week to get back from Alaska to Jersey. Uh, October 11th and 12th over there. So we'll see the War Games. Sometimes, like, I felt like the first time promotion use that sort of thing, MLW and so on, like, it has a certain cachet. Um, and I know GCW has done that gimmick well, but we'll see what happens here.
How about TNA Wrestling? What is the latest? I know we talked a little bit about them. We're talking a little bit about their attendance, but what's going on with their executive team and maybe even some shows coming up?
Yeah, so quietly, and it doesn't change anything right now in terms of the day to day, but for those of us that follow the executive movements, there was two that were on the list that it seemed like they were removed from TNA, but they were still involved. So I did a way back machine November screen capture. So Ed Nordholm, who was like the first person that was involved, like overseeing TNA, and Anthony Ciccione, who was in his last role there as the president of sports. Um, According to his LinkedIn, his position ended with Anthem on May 2025. Who was the producer that just left MLW, John? He's now
David
working.
Sahadi.
David Sahadi. So he mentioned Anthony briefly on his podcast, and that's why I bring it up. I don't want to spotlight Anthony too much, as he's not necessarily a public figure, but since Sahadi mentioned him and he has been listed as a Anthem executive, just want to mention it that Sahadi had mentioned that he was kind of he was put off when Anthony had called him, and he described it as 15 seconds that he had to let him go, basically, and then he was transferring him to HR. So he felt insulted there. So in terms of just looking at the executive team listings, so Nordholm and Anthony Ciccione, who at various points were long linked to TNA, are now no longer part of the executive team. Of course, Len Asper, Carlos Silva, Niral Merchant, chief financial officer, whose name was linked just once, like when they had that super show in the Middle East, where they sponsored it or they were connected to it somehow on the periphery. But then there's other presidents who aren't connected to the TNA side at all. Anthony Schuan, president of entertainment, David Keenis, the president of Hollywood Studios, which I think they had acquired, and then Michelle Hall, who's an HR advisor. I'm not sure if she's the person that when they say I'm transferring you to HR, or if there's other people. And Carol McDaniel, senior vice president of operations, Anthem Sports and Entertainment. So that's that. So just a little bit of that. We mentioned the shows briefly, but just looking at the upcoming Minneapolis. So kind of light on the ticket sales, sort of like what you would imagine, like TNA a couple years ago doing if they would hit the road in the hundreds. But again, Edmonton is something to watch, kind of like closer to their home base in Canada there. The Aspers, 1861, 1725. And of course, Lowell, like with the map movement here and there, sometimes it was overestimated, underestimated. But it's sticking at 3,000 for a while. We did see that with Slammiversary, so I guess we'll really know in the 2 weeks, the run up to the show, if they can break a record. That would be like, I think that was a really outlier. So I'm again pessimistic about it, but I am enough of a student of history to know that it could happen again. And yeah, and that's all of TNA for tonight.
You're being a little pessimistic, but let's talk about MLW and some of the shows that they've got coming up.
Yeah, so I think the most interesting one is the Charleston, South Carolina Don Gato show at the Charleston Music Hall. Looks like a cool venue. So thus far, out the door, 220 tickets for a venue that's set up to hold 607. Dallas, sometimes it's hard to tell, like we talked about on the show, how ticket sales are really moving, sometimes depending on what's been put on sale or not. But we'll see. Dallas, September 13th, LA, October 4th. Both of those venues have at certain times done really well for MLW. So we'll see. We talked about Charleston and Chicago on February 7th, Lucha Apocalypto, the show that had been moved.
How about WoW? What's going on with Paramount? What is the heck's going on over there in WoW Women of Wrestling?
So we talked about this briefly when Paramount was for sale and closed, but I just wanted to come back to it. So Paramount is bracing for thousands of cuts by early November. So they said that they're not planning to do like a little here and there and keep people on edge. Like once they cut, like, you know, in terms of major layoffs, that will be it for a while. So one thing to look at is like just from the outside looking in, Paramount Global content distribution, like producing shows like for syndication and getting here and there and fast channels and whatever, like in this big conglomerate of this merged Paramount that's bidding on UFC rights and all this sort of stuff, I don't know how important this division will be to them. So this is WoW's into the syndication, everything they've been doing for the last 3 years. So it's just something to look at, right? Like if that division is cut or if that's division sustains a number of cutbacks, how would that affect WoW? May not affect it at all, right? So, but just something to watch out for. It's also just noting that in terms of their tryouts, the first time they were doing one in Tampa, of course, outside of LA, those tryouts happened this month. So interesting to see, what might come of that.
What about Triller? What's the latest? I know you love Triller.
So indicative of sort of like stocks and when they're not following exactly what they're supposed to be doing on Wall Street, sometimes they get a lot of chances because it's sort of in everyone's best interest. So Triller receives NASDAQ delinquency notice, then an extension after missing financial filing deadlines. Triller has secured additional time from NASDAQ to file overdue financial reports after receiving the delinquency notice. The LA-based viral music video app operator on Friday, August 22nd, said it failed to submit its annual 10K for the year ended December 31st, 2024, along with quarterly reports for March 31st and June 30th. Under NASDAQ's rules, companies have to file these reports on schedule. NASDAQ initially flagged the violation and so on. So basically, right, like 3 times they haven't filed, going back to December 31st, 2024. So it's almost 9 months ago, and they keep getting chances. So we'll see what happens. There's some lawsuits in terms of using music rights and that sort of stuff that's still ongoing. So a lot for them to balance.
Now, your favorite topic, of course, here and there, and maybe my favorite topic, Jeff Jarrett. What's going on here?
Yeah, so usually we say here, there, and everywhere, but here we're just in one place tonight, Hendersonville. And this is
Love it.
via Dominic D'Angelo. He had a very interesting write-up. Jeff Jarrett, I've never wrestled in my hometown, exclusive. The Hall of Famer will change that on October 23rd with All-Star Super Slam. There's indeed more than one royal family in wrestling, and the Jarretts will be forever synonymous with Tennessee. Jarrett will make sure the legendary lineage comes full circle in October. Jared has plans for his hometown, Hendersonville, when All Star Super Slam invades the city's fifth annual Pig Fest on October 23rd at Veterans Park. The 3 day festival celebrates a huge backyard barbecue, but embraces some classic elements that make Tennessee so special, particularly music and pro wrestling. Not only will Pig Fest feature wrestling royalty in Jared, but country music royalty. The Oak Ridge Boys will be performing. All Star Super Slam will hold a special place for Jared. Despite his Tennessee ties, Jared has never wrestled in his hometown. Jared spoke with Dominic about it. My family's been in wrestling since 46. They've been in Hendersonville since the early 70s, and I started in 86, and I've never wrestled in my hometown. So the city approached me because they knew I was entering my 40th year, and they didn't ask me, they demanded it. I put on a show, and they already had the name. It's really going to be a special night and a great way to kick off the 3 days festival. Feature on the card will also be Ricky Morton, will be in attendance. James Storm and Eric Young will be competing. Also on tap, Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh. NWA matches are lined up, the Southern Six against the Heat Seekers, and so on. So kind of a fun little show, and we covered what that looks like a little bit more last week.
Love it. Love hearing about Jeff, and I love he's going to be wrestling in his hometown. So good stuff all around. A lot of interesting topics discussed. WWE all the way down to Hendersonville. So I love it. So let's hit the plugs and head towards the finish. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. How about you, Love?
Follow me on X at LavieMarg, LAVIEMARG. Check out my long form articles on linecubjobsearch.com. Find our group, The Business of the Business, on LinkedIn for job postings and talk about wrestling and all of that. We are the official business podcast of PW Ponderings. We are distributed by the Creative Control Network. Like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. We'd like to grow.
All right. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week.